Hey guys, what is up? This is Tyler from Animator Kid. The Temporal Cold War is one of the most intriguing, albeit one of the least effectively explored story arcs in the Star Trek franchise. Now, I'm going to admit, I actually think that Enterprise is a somewhat underrated show, although I do understand why many people believe it pales in comparison to its predecessors, because in a lot of ways it does. Nevertheless, I think that most can agree that the Temporal Cold War is at least an intriguing concept. Today I'm going to give a brief breakdown of the different factions involved in the Temporal Cold War, as well as how they interact with each other. First, let's take a quick overview of the various combatants. In the early 22nd century, we have the Suliban Cabal, as well as the United Earth Starfleet. Later in the millennium, we have the Na'kuhl, the Sphere Builders, a mighty powerful united federation of planets, and the Suliban's mysterious benefactor. There are also a number of proxy powers, which we'll explore during the course of this video. Alright, before I can describe how these powers interact, we have to establish the first timeline of events that occurred leading up to the Temporal Cold War. In the original version of history, deemed correct by the Federation in the 31st century, many of the events chronicled in Star Trek Enterprise were never meant to occur. Originally, by the year 2769, the Temporal Accord was ratified, an interstellar treaty signed after the development of time travel, prohibiting its use for the purpose of changing history. According to Daniels, the Accord permitted time travel only for the purpose of scientific research. However, there were certain groups that were opposed to this, thus where the Cold War part of the phrase emerged. One of the initial attempts to turn the war hot, and the first one featured in Enterprise, was the recruitment of the Suliban Cabal. The Suliban homeworld had become uninhabitable by the 1850s. By the 22nd century, a group of Suliban came in contact with a mysterious figure from 600 years into the future, who gave them advanced technology in exchange for their services. The figure had the Cabal carry out operations to destabilize various powers, including the Klingons. The true identity of this future benefactor was never revealed. Some of the writers on the show hinted that he was a Romulan, or that he was a future version of Jonathan Archer. The novel Watching the Clock suggests he was a descendant of the Suliban who led a faction opposed to the others in the Temporal Cold War. One of these factions opposed by the Cabal is the Sphere Builders, who were introduced in Season 3 of Enterprise. The Sphere Builders originate from a transdimensional realm outside the normal space-time continuum, and they have the ability to examine the outcomes of different timelines. They were responsible for the creation of a vast network of spheres, capable of transforming space to become more habitable for their species, in prelude for an invasion. However, the Sphere Builders discovered that the Federation was destined to repel their invasion during the 26th century of a possible future. With this knowledge, the Sphere Builders contacted the Xindi, a collection of 5 species who had evolved on a planet called Xindus. By the 2030s, the Xindi had come to the conclusion of a global civil war that led to the destruction of their homeworld. The Sphere Builders, whom the Xindi regarded as gods, told them that humanity would eventually destroy their race, a falsehood no less, prompting the Xindi to attack Earth in 2153. This is what kicks off the Xindi story arc of Season 3, in which the Enterprise must prevent them from destroying Earth. It concludes with the destruction of the Delphic Expanse, the network built to transform space to become uninhabitable. The fourth main faction depicted in the series is the Na'kuhl, who, by the 29th century, had decided to infiltrate the past for their own gain. According to Star Trek Online, one of the main reasons the Na'kuhl protested against the Temporal Accord was because they wished to use time travel to restore their homeworld, which had been destroyed by the Tholians in 2410. In the 2-part Enterprise episode Stormfront, the Na'kuhl invade Earth's past and kill Vladimir Lenin, altering the course of both Russian history and World War II, leading to a Nazi victory. Of course, this alteration is corrected by the crew of the Enterprise, ending the temporarily open conflict in the war. Of course, none of this was supposed to happen, according to temporal agents working for the Federation in the 31st century. The Cabal, the Xindi, all of these and more had no recorded contact with Starfleet during the time frame seen in Enterprise, according to them. Obviously, this all changed. This means that, assuming Enterprise is canon, everything that happens afterwards, from the original series to the Next Generation era, happens far differently, if at all, in the quote-unquote original timeline. I'll have another video exploring this topic coming soon, but suffice it to say, the changes in the timeline that occurred during the Enterprise era are regarded as an alternate version of history, with the rest of the franchise following suit. This would explain why Alpha Quadrant powers such as the Cardassians, the Breen, the Ferengi, and more are not necessarily seen until the Next Generation era, which takes place 200 years after Enterprise. It would seem that Starfleet wanted to stay away from that area of space for a while, mostly exploring the Beta Quadrant and interacting with powers such as the Klingons and the Romulans. In what is designated as the Prime Timeline, essentially everything seen on screen since the beginning of the original series, The furthest into the future we have seen is 2387, officially that is, meaning that any events past this date are going to differ heavily from the future Federation depicted in Enterprise. So these are all the main temporal Cold War factions featured on the show. The Tholians are implied to be a proxy power in the 22nd century when they attempted to steal a time ship in the episode Future Tense, and the Tendarans also count because they are warring with the Suliban. Another faction could also be the Borg, since they possess time travel technology as well. Of course, various Star Trek novels go into more detail about many of these things, which you can read about at Memory Beta. In the meantime, thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and comment as well as share it. If you want to support me on Patreon, be sure and click the element on the end screen. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to be awesome. Live long and prosper.